from years ago. Crime scenes and clues dance within my mind. In the pages of a mystery, we where secrets unwind. Saw the riddle behind the locked door. With every twist I'm begging for more. Golden age tales that steal my breath. In a world of fiction, leaving real life bereft. Sherlock's sharp mind and Poirot's keen eye. See the plot unravel as the villains comply. Chasing shadows in the noir of night. With every chapter turning wrongs into right.
Hi, my name is Talia. Welcome to Talia Nerds Out. This is number who knows what of a ton of book review videos recorded at once. Welcome to my new recording location. I think I've recorded here once or twice. The Christmas tree has been removed, so I am returning to what is normally our yarn tube recording location. Hence all the yarny animals about. But this particular video is a book review for The House Without a Key. So like the previous video I recorded, this is a review about a murder mystery. So this will probably be shorter because I really can't risk giving anything away. But I did want to touch upon it. This is a book by Earl Biggers, and I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. He writes the Charlie Chan series. And this is the first one in the series, The House Without a Key. And I started this December 23rd and finished it December 24th. It was a really quick read for me. I found the style of writing to be almost modern. Like, it was very quick. And this, by the way, he is older than, I think that his work came out in between Doyle and the Detection Club, I want to say.
Editing Talia here. I just figured I'd do some research on Earl Biggers just because I was curious. So he did land kind of in between Sherlock Holmes and the Detection Club. So his first mystery novels were, he first started in 1913. And his last mystery novel was 1933. His first novel was called 7 Keys to Baldpate, looks like, and it was published in 1913. But his first Charlie Chan novel, which is this one here, The House Without a Key, was released in 1925. Now the sad thing is, the Detection Club was founded in 1930, so he could have had the potential of being offered membership. As far as I can tell, he never was a member, but he sadly died in 1933, just 3 years after the Detection Club was founded. He was only 48 years old. So I don't know what happened there, but he died quite young. So that's why it kind of feels like he just sort of was in between Conan Doyle's Holmes and most of the Detection Club work. He was kind of a contemporary to the early Detection Club for the last bit of his work. But I just thought that was interesting and I wanted to share.
But I'm not quite sure. He didn't predate Doyle, but his work is somewhere in between there. But he has a whole series, which is the Charlie Chan series. This is the first one. You are mostly in Hawaii for this series. And I kind of find that Charlie Chan is like a little bit more active than Miss Marple, maybe not quite as active as a Poirot. Now that people's opinions might vary on that as they read it. That was kind of my opinion. Now, of course, not most detectives aren't going to be quite as flamboyant as a Poirot. And he's, very much a character in his own way. But your main story does take place on Hawaii, where Charlie Chan lives, although Charlie is actually Chinese. And you follow this one family where a branch of them lives in Hawaii, and a branch of them lives pretty much mostly in Massachusetts, although you have some of them in San Francisco. And it's like you have the kind of wanderlust, kind of more wild side of the family, which is kind of represented by the Hawaii branch. And then you have the ones that are the Massachusetts branch, which are almost like Puritans. And the story deals with this family and about a murder mystery that occurs in this location in Hawaii. I feel that this book does a very good job in drawing out its main characters. It does a good job in making them feel real. They have definite character voices. And what I mean by that is if you had a character say something and you didn't have a tag like so-and-so said, I feel like I would, for the most part, be able to tell which character was speaking based off of the character voice that the author established, which is a sign of good writing, because if you've done your job well, that should be the case for the most part. You should be able to have an idea from context clues and from character voice who the character is and the fact that they are acting in character. And I do feel like Biggers did a good job with this. I am disappointed to find out that several of the main characters that I really ended up liking from this book do not carry on into subsequent books, which is a huge disappointment for me because I would have liked to have seen those characters again. But I might end up, I enjoyed the writing the first time around, and I might have to forgive Biggers for not using those other characters again and revisit his work in the future. And I feel that he also managed to do something that you don't, sometimes this isn't a strength with all authors, where sometimes if you read Christie, you can tell that she's very much in the mind of her characters, and she doesn't mention the surroundings unless they are very much important to the plot. That's very much the same way I tend to think about writing. Everything is very character focused to almost to the exclusion of any backdrop. Now, like I said, Christie will add more than I would normally in my own because to an extent that, location and that kind of thing is important to her story. But that isn't her natural preference. If she can do without, she does without. Whereas Biggers, I think, does well in when he draws up Hawaii, he lets you see it, but doesn't feel like you're being bogged down in the details. He paints a picture, but he doesn't do so at a detriment to his characters, which I think sometimes you can find in the fantasy genre or with newer authors, where they will just, sort of wax philosophic about, and, the sky was like this and the grass was like that. And they'll just go on forever about what things looked like. And you'd be like, but yeah, what about the plot? What about the characters? And this did a good job of covering all the bases, I felt. You could see where the characters were at, but it was also very much mired in individual characters' point of view. After a certain point, you did spend most of the book in one specific character's point of view who ended up taking the role of main character, but there were points that you popped over to other characters. But for pretty much as soon as this one character arrives, you are in his point of view. And that's kind of, I think, to a certain extent, a necessity that you almost need to choose a few characters. Usually Christie tends to choose a few, but I feel like sometimes the most powerful mysteries, and this is someone who's a huge Christie fan, I think some of your most powerful mysteries are when you only have the one point of view, because then you are hampered by the biases and what the narrator is available to see, or what your main character that you're following is available to see. You are caught up in his point of view, in the unreliable, possibly unreliable narrator. And this is something that, like I said, to a certain extent, you do have the ability to feel like you are just in this one character's point of view, not Charlie's. I think a lot of times it's actually even best that your main point of view character is not your detective. Because then you are able to you don't have them thinking through their process on the page, giving it all away to you. I think it works to have a secondary character who is trying to keep up with the detective, trying to figure things out, but who doesn't have all the answers and who isn't the one who figures out the mystery in the end. I think it works for him to be your narrator. But unless you are doing the kind of mystery where it's not the mystery at the end, you aren't going to have that big reveal that's so popular in Golden Age mysteries where you sit everyone down and like, this is what actually happened. And you have like sometimes a twist that a lot of times a twist that no one saw coming. But when you look back, it was all set up to begin with. That kind of story does need you not to be in the head of the detective. And so Charlie Chan, even though this is pre-Detection Club, Charlie Chan is more like a Poirot insofar as like you don't live in his head of, okay, let's follow his detection process throughout from his point of view. I think honestly that Earl Dare Biggs, even though he is pre-Detection Club, follows a lot of the decalogue of the Detection Club insofar as he doesn't use cheap tricks. He really sets up things well that when you look back, you can kind of be like, okay, I can see where there might have been a bit of some setup for this. Now, I don't feel that maybe the setup for this was quite as strong. Like, I could see where someone might have missed the setup for this one, where they might not have missed it in the Red House mystery. It was a little bit more subtle in this one. And you really had to, I think, be paying attention to catch it. But I do believe he did leave that detail in there to be caught if you're paying really close attention. But this has kind of a little bit of it all. It's got, the clashing of cultures between, more laid backness of Hawaii, and then you've got the Massachusetts almost like rigidness. And then you have the mystery part of things where you're trying to figure out what's going on, who did the murder, why they did the murder. And then you also have the romantic subplot. You have the almost like action adventure part of it, because it goes beyond where sometimes, the Golden Age mysteries, they weren't high on let's have the suspense necessarily. Some of them can be more like you would feel that your main characters were in more danger than maybe some others were. But a lot of times you knew that your main character you were focusing on was probably going to be okay till the end of the book. And I thought that this book, you were wondering how things were going to turn out. I mean, you knew that Charlie Chan would be okay because he has a whole series, but you wondered about some of the fates of some of the other characters. And I thought that there were many different things pulled into this book that were very interesting. And it was fast-paced. It never really seemed to kind of bog down and lag. It consistently kept a good pace. It was a very fast read. And yeah, I just really enjoyed it. I did find it funny, and probably it's something of the era, because I noticed this in a couple of the older books where they'll be this doesn't usually happen with a female character of this age. But if you're dealing with the main character and he could be 30, that could be exactly his age, and they would call him a boy And just like, that's a literal man. Like, what are you talking about? But it was interesting because I've noticed this in a few books of around that era, where if you're dealing with a man in his anywhere from early 30s younger, they would be referred to as a boy. Whereas if you had a woman in her early 30s, that was a woman. No one called her a girl. I just thought that was it's a very interesting difference. I'm not sure if this goes back to some of the thoughts that women, of course, in older times, you know, you'd look at it medieval time and in antiquity, where women would marry younger. Their child, you know, that you would see women who were basically children getting married. And as soon as was considered physically possible, they would be expected to bear children. Whereas men, and I want to say this was not just medieval Europe, but also in places like Rome and antiquity, young men were like not really looked upon as being responsible till like they were in their mid-20s. It was like they were kind of like looked upon as almost like, ooh, they're kind of like immature and not really sure about them. I want to say, I wish I could remember which book I was reading. And I want to say this is for medieval, where they couldn't come fully into their property until they were a bit older. I think it was mid-20s. And I wish I could remember, like, could have complete control of things. And I wish I could remember, because that can't be completely accurate. But I remember being surprised about the fact that you really weren't considered a man nearly as early as, even as early as your 21st birthday. That was like, no, you need to wait a while longer. And that kind of seems to be reflected in the language of this book when you're dealing with a character who is almost 30 and they're consistently calling him a boy. In the narrative voice, this isn't even other characters calling him a boy. This is the narrative text calling this character a boy. You would think that he was, I mean, you'd be like, okay, he's got to be like, what, 25 to be, like, at least he's got to be like, he can't be almost 30. No, the man's almost 30 and they're calling him a boy. It's just, it's very interesting how things were written at that time period. And I guess before too. But yeah, that is this book. I really don't want to go into too much detail because I don't want to ruin this book for anyone. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Once again, this is Earl Derbigger's The House Without a Key, and this is the first of the Charlie Chan mysteries. If you have read any of the Charlie Chan mysteries, or apparently it's a show as well, or movies, if you've watched any Charlie Chan or read any Charlie Chan, please put it in the comments. If you have not and would be interested, I would like to hear that as well. But yeah, until I see you next time, God bless. Bye.
Solve the riddle behind the locked door. With every twist I'm begging for more. Golden age tales that steal my breath. In a world of fiction, leaving real life bereft. Lost in the jungle or adrift at sea. Adventures abound in every mystery. With golden spines on this wooden shelf. Travel through time while losing oneself.